What up? It's the Athletic Hockey Show. Sean Gentille here. To the side of me is Frank Corrado. To the other side of me, farther to the same side of me, actually, Sean McIndoe. We're talking YouTube terms now, guys. We're talking about visuals and what have you. Thank you to everybody who subscribed. It's been fun seeing that take off. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's doing better than the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're just going to dump the pucks out today. Let these two boys skate around. Another ugly loss for Toronto. This one to the Boston Bruins. Fellas, I was perusing the site this morning. The top 4 Leafs headlines on there. A guide to this year's Leaf seasons for Blue Jays fans who are just tuning in now. And you can guess who wrote that. He's on the record right now. With Auston Matthews' injury, things have gone from bad to worse for the Leafs. Uh-oh, that sounds bad too. Myrtle, who's to blame for the Maple Leafs' poor start to the 25-26 season? Everything's going awesome, right? Right.
Today has the feel of a practice. This is for us. This is us. It's a feel of a practice where there's kind of no rules. The pucks just get dumped on the ice, and it's like, just go have at it. 30 minutes and do whatever you want out there. Because quite honestly, that's what it feels like the Leafs are doing with the way they're playing the game. Just hopping on the ice, seeing what happens. Maybe we'll win. Maybe we won't. We probably won't. But there's not a lot of detail to their game right now, and that is a scary thing. There's a lot of things not going well for them. And when you wake up and you're Toronto, and usually you follow up a slow October with the quote-unquote November to remember, and now this year it's been anything but, and you wake up today and the only team worse than you in the Eastern Conference is the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know if we have to significantly adjust our expectations for who the Leafs are, or is this just who they are now? But there are so many things going wrong with this group, and it's almost like you don't even know where to start. But there's big issues in Toronto.
Well, what's the primary issue, McIndoe? I'm sure you just had to change what your original plan was on the Leafs column for the lapsed Jays fan.
I wrote that yesterday during the day, and then as the game was going on, I had to go in and edit it and make it meaner because I'm like, I had things in there where I'm like, well, I mean, they're still 500. They're not terrible, and I'm like, no, this is going to get me yelled at. So yeah, I don't even know where to start. Other than, okay, let's say this. They brought in Craig Berube. He has a certain system. He clearly wants them to play this system. They made some adjustments to it over the summer to make them more of a defensive team. Playing on the right side of the puck is the catchphrase now. And they're just not doing it. And I don't know if it's because the players can't. I don't know if they don't want to. I don't know if they're sick of the coach already after one season and 16 games, or what it is. Maybe the system is broken. Maybe it isn't a fit for the skill. You go down the list. But the point is, right now, every Leafs game, we do 2 days of they've got to get it figured out defensively, and then the next game comes around, they drop the puck, and immediately the other team is getting breakaways and odd man rushes and all of this stuff. And I'm not enough of an X's and O's guy to specifically pinpoint what's going wrong, but I'm enough of a hockey fan to know that something is going very badly wrong here, because I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be giving up 4 breakaways every period.
No, I just the biggest defensive issue for me, this is an X's and O's thing, is how porous they are off the rush. And if you ask anyone, what's the quickest way to generate offense? What's the easiest way to generate offense in the NHL? And anyone will tell you, man, if you could get quick strike stuff off the rush, it is so much easier, because once you get, playing in the offensive zone and a team sets up their D zone coverage, it's hard to break through the different layers. And it's you have to play, possession time before you can break them down, before you can get the shot, get the chance and the rebound. But offense off the rush? You kidding me? In 5 seconds, I'm going to go from blue line to opposing hash marks and get a good scoring chance, I'll take that any day of the week. And guess what? Teams are taking that against Toronto right now because they are like the worst rush team against in the league right now. And for me, this is what it comes down to. DGB, you talked about being on the right side of your check. And that's something that, this Craig Berube system is. It was the Sheldon Keefe system. It's the Mike Babcock system. It's every system in the history of hockey is being on the right side and not getting 3 players trapped in the offensive zone. So you're giving up 3-on-2s and 2-on-1s and eventually breakaways. Like we're talking about the bare minimum that they're not even doing that right now when it comes to negating all these rush chances. But another thing that comes to mind is when you're playing defense on the rush, when you get back into your own zone, around the blue line, everyone should know what their defined responsibility is as they go towards their own net. Meaning we should be able to create, 3 1-on-1s in 3 lanes so that we know, okay, if the puck goes here, I can get a stick on it. If it tries to go across us, well, now it's got to go through 2 sticks and the other guy can get a stick on it. That's not happening. And other teams' defensemen are beating the Leafs forwards up the ice consistently and getting chances. And so you watch it and it's a complete mess and it's so easy for teams to generate offense and it's a massive issue for them. It's a massive issue. And that's not I don't know. That's just every team should know what they're doing off the rush. I'm sorry. Coach can communicate to you as best as he can, and maybe that's something that's not happening right now. Maybe they don't know their defined roles and responsibilities coming into their own zone. I know I'm long-winded and ranting, but that's the biggest glaring issue right now as far as how they're defending.
And here's the other thing, though, is that right now what we're seeing is bad. They're clearly spiraling right now on that side of things. But it wasn't like this is brand new. We saw a lot of this last year, too. You look at the underlying numbers and all of that. A lot of them weren't great last year, in the first year under Craig Berube. But the difference was they were getting Vezina-level goaltending, and that bails you out an awful lot. And
they were a PDO team last year, to use a phrase that a lot of people don't like.
Yes, they got better results. I won't say better results than they deserve last year because goaltending's part of hockey. The power play is part of hockey. I mean, there were warning signs on the dashboard last year, but they were able to paper over them by, sometimes your strengths outweigh your weaknesses, and that's was really the story of last year for this team. And now it's not happening. The power play can't do anything, and the goaltending is not good. And specifically Anthony Stolarz, I mean, they had the graphic last night on the broadcast, which I thought was interesting, of his numbers before and after he called his teammates out after the night that he got run over a bunch of times. I mean, he has not been good. And last night he left the game early, apparently as we're led to believe now, a minor injury, but who knows, maybe it's something he's been fighting for the last little while. Maybe it's unfair to say he hasn't been good the last bit. Maybe he's been playing through something. Hard to say. But the results just haven't been there. This is what happens when you're not good defensively and you don't have that Vezina-level goaltender bailing you out. It gets ugly. Yeah. It's ugly.
And it's an 884 save percentage for Stolarz. He's not below zero in goal saved.
It's not good, man. And listen, he calls out this team. That's old news. Like everyone's kind of talked about that and wrapped that up. And he
you didn't like that though. Like
I didn't like that because
let's re-up that. You weren't psyched to hear that.
I didn't like that because first of all, there's always a conversation afterwards within the group where the next day everyone's coming to the facility. And there's going to be a meeting within the players and even the coaching staff where everyone just says, guys, we have anything to say to each other, we say it in here. We're all brothers. We're family. We're in this together. We don't bring, outside noise into this dressing room. So if we have something to say, let's all be comfortable having the conversations in here. Who knows? Maybe that happened and he got fed up and he lost himself in the moment and he said something he shouldn't have. But that, I'm sure he would want a mulligan on that whole situation because now he's added more pressure in a very pressure-packed situation. You're the goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's enough pressure. But now you add that things aren't going well for the team in front of you, and you're playing more than you ever have. Like, you don't have any reprieve. You don't get a night off unless it's a back-to-back because Joseph Woll's not there. That's already enough pressure. But then you're going to put a target on your back from, I don't know, teammates or outside noise. It wasn't smart. It wasn't a calculated move. And now the numbers tell us that, he struggled before and he's struggling afterwards. And that's an issue. But, one thing, like, Anthony Stolarz is not wrong about this. He's not wrong that he gets bumped and hit, and there's a lot of chaos that happens in his crease, and nothing happens the other way. Like, Toronto doesn't get any rebound whacks and hacks and second chances. They just don't. Like, and that's something going back to the Keefe era that was an issue. Like, they made a lot of really pretty plays, man. Like, rush chances. They could get going on the cycle, and Marner could hit Matthews for a nice play in the slot, but it's a goal from 20 feet away. And now that Toronto's this different kind of team, big, heavy, was supposed to be big and heavy and mean, forechecking type of team, they still don't get anything from the goalmouth area. That's got to be, if you're going to be a big, heavy forechecking team, that's got to be a hallmark of your team, and that's not the case. And that's that's a big issue too.
The scale and the measuring sticks might say they're big and heavy, but this is not a big, heavy team, and it's sure not a mean team. And look, it's 2025. It's not 1985. We can't just go out there and send out the goon squad and tell them to go take numbers and all of that, but there was an implied suggestion when they brought in Craig Berube that was part of what was coming in, is this team is going to get nasty and it's going to, and all of this stuff. And I hate to say it, people have heard me do this before, but this idea of, we got to have an identity in the NHL. I'm so sick of hearing that, because the identity is always the same. Every team, same identity, hard to play against, smart defensively, boring, win 2-1, all of that stuff. But it just hasn't clicked. This doesn't feel like this team doesn't feel different from the Sheldon Keefe era. It feels worse, maybe. Certainly right now.
Doesn't it feel stale compared to the Sheldon Keefe era? Okay, but DGB, you talk about teams having an identity, right? And you say that, a lot of teams want to have the same identity, except if you're Colorado, where you're hard to play against is that we are going to skate you into the ground and you're not going to have the puck and you're going to chase us all game long. You know who that was like 3 years ago? The Toronto Maple Leafs.
The Maple Leafs.
The Maple Leafs used to be a team that way, where when they were at their best, they're hard to play against was that when Matthews' line was on the ice, they had 70% of the possession and the chances. And guys after the game, I would hear it all the time. Like, I would do the radio, pregame and postgame shows with Jim Taddy on TSN 1050, and we would roll audio for an hour after the game. And all we would hear was, the opposing coach or the best players for Toronto say, yeah, it felt like we were fast and we had the puck all night and they couldn't get anything going. And then we would hear the opposing team say, man, you just felt like you never have it against those guys. And that's like, we're talking 3 years ago now. And that was their identity at the time. It almost feels like Toronto has tried to address these playoff demons by getting, these slower, worse, tougher, bigger guys. And they moved so far away from that, where you're almost better off just saying, we are going to be the fastest team on the ice every game. And we're going to have the puck more than you, and you're just going to have to chase us around. And they never doubled down on that. And now what this team lacks in so many different ways is skill. It's not grit. Well, they lack grit too, but who cares? They were never going to be gritty enough, but they could have been way more skilled than everyone. But they tried to implement all these pieces and mesh it all together. And now you have what you have. And it's kind of messy looking, and it doesn't look good what's going on out there.
And I get that transformation, because the skill era did not work in the playoffs. I mean, we saw it over and over again. This skill team would go in and they would get shut down by a Florida or whoever else it was, Boston, And so I get the idea of, hey, maybe we take a step back in the regular season so that we can take a step forward in the playoffs. That's a trade every Leaf fan would have taken when Craig Berube came aboard. But the problem is right now it feels like it's 2 or 3 or 4 steps back in the regular season. And look, the optimist view, I guess, is maybe this is just the growing pains. I don't know why we're seeing growing pains a year plus into this.
Yeah, from a bunch of 30-year-olds. Yeah.
But maybe this is just learning, and if it costs you 5 points or even 10 points in the regular season, you still make the playoffs and you're better equipped. Maybe it's just tough to get into that mindset right now because it's 5 months away, and right now, if the playoffs started today, the Leafs wouldn't be in them.
Well, okay.
And
ask yourself this. Ask yourself this, okay, as you try and unpack what the Leafs are. I'll pose it to both of you. What's the one thing that you can cling to that would tell you it's November 12th today and they're going to turn this around and they'll be all good like they usually are, where it's no sweat and they just make the playoffs? Is there one thing that you can cling to right now?
Auston Matthews.
He's hurt.
That's right. He sure is. He's hurt after last night. Lower body injury, gets checked into the boards. Ruby wasn't thrilled about that, obviously. Here's my question for you guys. Who is the new sin eater for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Who is the new scapegoat? We've seen them cycle through them over the years. It was Sheldon Keefe. It was Kyle Dubas. It was Mitch Marner.
Justin Hall. It was Jake Gardner. It was,
God! It's been Morgan Riley intermittently. It certainly was Jake,
William Nylander for a lot of years there.
Yeah. Most of those guys are gone in some capacity. The Rileys and Nylanders and Tavareses of the world have stuck on the roster. I think they've all worn that collar at one point or another. But who is to blame for this primarily now? The better question is maybe where does the laser get truly focused? Like, does this turn into a Berube thing? Does this turn into a Tree Living thing? Does this turn into an Auston Matthews thing? Are people projecting anger onto Brandon Carlo because he was the big trade addition who's gonna, who it's a top 5 protected lottery pick going back to Boston? So I guess they have that going for them. Like, who is the guy who ascends to the peak of Mount Scapegoat here for Leafs Nation? Because there's going to be somebody.
If it's the pie chart, I think it's a pie chart situation. I think we got to break out the pie chart, and you got to go percentage of the pie. And the reality is, when the team that has been so good for so long, okay, I was talking to someone about this morning, actually. I was there for year 1 of this iteration of the Toronto Maple Leafs being together. Matthews, Nylander, Marner's of course gone. Morgan Riley was there. That was 2016, 2017. Just to let you know how long, to put it into perspective, how long these guys have essentially been cruising to the playoffs, stress-free. I was there year 1. I played for a bunch of different teams in the minors, different NHL team, played for 2 teams in 2 continents in Europe, and started a new career, and now I'm like 3 years into that career.
Yeah, got married, long. Had a couple babies,
got married, had a couple
been some
kids.
Big changes.
That's how long we have held the Toronto Maple Leafs to the expectation that you just get to the playoffs, and then it's up to you guys to get over the hump. Now it's like we have to almost adjust that, because today we wake up and they're in the basement of the Eastern Conference, which is just not something that has happened. So as far as like assessing the blame to people, there's like, listen, the general manager has made some moves that, he moved on from a guy like Fraser Minton and a first round pick and has brought in Brandon Carlo, and it hasn't worked out and couldn't get Mitch Marner signed. And and now it's a different coach who's a different voice than what Sheldon Keefe was. And so there's going to be blame for the GM. There's going to be blame for the coach. There's going to be blame for the players who are ultimately, very good players, but aren't playing to their capability. Goaltending, that took a huge step back this year. it's all about assessing the percentage. But when they're that bad this year, it's not just one thing. It's not the old, hey, Justin Hall had a couple, plays that cost us a game. It's not that. It's this feels different than the old school one guy's the whipping boy. This is the pie chart of percentage.
And that sounds a lot worse. That sounds like the single biggest thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys can both answer this, but like, what are you more concerned about regarding this team than anything else? And to me, if I were in your shoes, and if I had a vested interest in the success of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I don't, I think the fact that there isn't one whipping boy is the single biggest problem. There's no single person left to absorb, all the negativity and all the beating. This seems more like a full systems failure than we've ever seen from them in the past.
It does. I mean, I think you could argue that a lot of the previous failures were system failures too, but it was just fans and fan bases and markets doing what they do. But it does feel like that time is over in Toronto, at least right now. It's not, you talked about lasering it on somebody. It's not right now. It's the blame, the anger, the frustration in Toronto. It's a machine gun. It's not a sniper rifle. It's everybody's getting it. And look, I mean, you talk about percentages. That's Myrtle's piece that I would suggest people go read, where he was talking about where does the blame lie. Like, that's the approach he
published
took.
2 days ago, by the way.
This is 2 days ago.
This is before the latest
different world, but here we are. I really feel like if I had to focus it, I think you're seeing more of it on the coach and the front office right now. I think a lot of people are looking at Craig Berube going, this is year 2. Is this working? Is it not? And it's coming from both sides, because you've got the people who maybe like Sheldon Keefe and like that era and like the high speed, play to your strengths, don't worry about the playoffs, just be the best team you can be in the moment. They like that approach, and they don't like this new Berube approach. And then there's also a lot of people who loved it when Craig Berube came in, because they were like, great. Here's a grizzled, no-nonsense guy. He's not going to baby these guys the way Sheldon Keefe kind of felt like he was sometimes. We're not going to see him offer little tiny mild criticisms and then immediately walk it back the next day because somebody's fifis got hurt and he has to like repair the relationships. This guy's going to come in and crack some skulls. And so far, I mean, he looks furious on the bench, but then, who's gotten benched? Who's gotten sent to the press box? Who's gotten called out? You don't really see it. So, I mean, Craig Berube is kind of caught in between, where it's like, do I be even more Berubian than I have been, or do I dial it back and maybe adjust to this roster that I've got? But I really think it's more even than that. You're going to start seeing the Brad Treliving hot seat warm up, because even in Myrtle's piece, I saw, he singled out Berube. Berube got a big chunk of the blame. And then in the comments, people are going, yeah, who hired Craig Berube? Well, it was Brad Treliving. And last year's deadline looks like a disaster. He went all in on Brandon Carlo and Scott Lawton, and meanwhile makes the Carlo trade, gives up a first-round pick and a very good prospect in Fraser Minton for Carlo, from a team that then trades Brad Marchand for less to Florida. And, which guy would you rather have for a playoff run? The offseason stuff hasn't worked out great. The new guys who are coming in, this whole thing of, we can rebuild Mitch Marner in the aggregate Moneyball approach has failed completely.
Yeah.
And I think people are looking at Treliving's track record in Calgary and all of that stuff, and it's not great. So I think that's where you're going to see it, and then it trickles down. But again, it just bounces back up. Treliving's been here long enough now that if you don't like a guy on the roster, good chance Brad Treliving is the one who went and got him. You don't like a contract, good chance Brad Treliving's the guy who signed that contract. It's whatever your thoughts on Kyle Dubas, that era is largely done. I'm not saying it's a completely clean slate, but it's no longer can you point to the past and say those guys screwed it up and Brad's just here to clean it up. He's not cleaning it up. It's not very clean out there. It's ugly, and I think that's where you're going to see the fans pointing. And that's a problem because, hey, if everyone wants to point to Morgan Rielly, you could trade Morgan Rielly, or you could trade for somebody to come in and bump him down the lineup. When it comes to a front office, you're talking much bigger changes, and they're tough to do in November.
For Tree Living, though, I know we got to go to break, but he can always redeem himself with a couple smart trades, right? Like you make something happen, and all of a sudden that jumpstarts your team and sparks it. There's always that possibility. So
with all those tradable assets they have, all those tradable
and
assets
also this is the same guy. It's been 5 months of him trying to trade David Kampf. Like your 6th best center, and it's apparently too complicated for this front office to pull off. So I you'll forgive me if I'm not really too excited about their ability to pivot now when, the Calle Yarncroc trade watch is, we're into month 8 of that or whatever.
Trades are hard, Sean. Don't you understand?
There's a salary cap. Did you guys know that? It makes people's jobs really hard. That's why there's no trades in the NBA ever.
Frank, who's your pick? Blame somebody. Come on.
I told you it's everyone. Right? It's a cop-out move, but I'm sorry.
It's correct.
When goaltending, worst in the NHL. Defensively, porous. It's goaltending has some blame, coaching has some blame, players have some blame because they're not clearly getting what they're supposed to be doing, and some of the moves that have been made in the front office, I'm like, what is that, four things I named? It's 25% each. All the way around the pie right now for me. And until I see anything further, it's just everyone's got to take their share of it. It's not one thing when you've been that below your expectations to start the season.
I think that was a segment for everybody because Leafs fans want to revel in their own suffering, and
there was a Dallas Cowboys
opposing fan bases want to do the exact same.
That felt like an ESPN Dallas Cowboys type of segment where nationally, if you're a fan of any other team, you'd be like, I can mess with that. I can find some entertainment in the Cowboys struggles, and I feel like hockey fans can find entertainment in Leaf struggles.
I can't wait to hear from all the people who are like, why do the Leafs get so much coverage? And then they post that comment 18 times in every single Leafs article and can't square the circle of how those two things might be related.
I've got some numbers that answer the question, why do the Leafs struggles get so much attention?
Yeah.
I think next segment we're going to talk about some other crummy teams
and how they affect the Maple Leafs.
That's the big. What have the Nashville Predators done to affect the Toronto Maple Leafs over the last few weeks? Stick around for that. All right, we're back. As we said a couple minutes ago, there are in fact other bad teams in the NHL besides the Toronto Maple Leafs. We want to talk about a couple of those here, fellas. Don't know how much you've been paying attention to way things are going in Nashville. Not great. Lost 6-3 to the Rangers a couple days ago. A bunch more losses before that. Last in the league in goal differential, or in 5-on-5 goal share. Second from the bottom in points. We had the whole Ryan O'Reilly kerfluffle last week. It seems like he apologized for some of that and fell on his sword. Right? Like they caught him at a bad moment. Clearly, can't blame him for that. Let's rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, Frankie. Like how bad do you view the situation in Nashville right now? Especially when we're talking about Barry Trotz's future. We're certainly talking about Andrew Burnett's future. People are already trying to work Steven Stamkos out of there in some way or another. Trade vultures are circling. Like this is a devolving situation, I would say.
It's so weird in how dire, how bad of a situation. Like, I don't know, out of 10, it's got to be an 8. Like at least it's got to be an 8. Like I never want to say 10 out of 10 because there's a lot of good people involved in these situations that are good hockey players that it's just not gone well for Nashville. And a lot of guys with really good track records. Like Ryan O'Reilly is one of those guys. He's one of the best guys you'll meet in hockey. He really is. And he's a great player and has been for a long time. But the moves that they've made in Nashville have clearly not made the team better. Their goaltender's not getting any younger, and he gets bombarded and peppered seemingly every time he's in the net.
Gets yanked against the Rangers on Monday night.
Yeah,
like he allowed
gave
5.
up goals at Madison Square Garden. Nobody does that.
That's right. Yeah,
5 goals in New York. He's like giving up 15 somewhere else.
Roman Yossi's only played 8 games this season. Like, he's trying to play with, he's got pots and he's playing through stuff. Like, it's just, it's not a great situation. And now, Steven Stamkos, Stamkos a really good player. He's been a really good goal scorer for a long time in the NHL. Is he still a play-driving centerman? No, but he's a useful goal scorer. But they're not getting that out of him. So it's crazy what's going on in Nashville. I don't know, like, how you turn it around there, quickly. And Andrew Burnett as a coach, like, had the reputation of being this, like, offensively, minded, empowering his players to do a lot with the puck. And, like, they certainly played that way in Florida when he was there. And they don't score a lot. Like, a lot of that has to do with they don't have a lot down the middle of the ice. But, man, it's not great in Nashville. And like, you're at the point now where it's like, do you try and strip it? And then how far back does that set you as you try and, get back to some kind of trajectory that makes you a winning team?
They're in Sweden now too. They had to fly over there for the Sweden series with the Penguins. Like, this is the wheels. It would be disingenuous to say that they're wobbling. Those things are about to fall off.
It's also tough in that market, guys. Like, it's tough in that market to sell a rebuild, because it's not like a guaranteed. Like, if you were, I lived through the rebuild in Toronto. Like, I was there when we were last place and we drafted Auston Matthews. Guess what? I looked up every night, whether I was in the press box or on the ice. There wasn't an empty seat. You didn't have to worry about that. Not every market is like that. Some markets,
that's a big differentiation. That's a major differentiation point for Toronto too. Like I'm speaking, of course, from like a Pittsburgh centric point of view here. There are so many fan bases and there's so many cities in the NHL that think that, where there's been a lot of success, that think they're immune to all the problems that creep in when you're on year 2 or year 3 or year 5 of like a protracted rebuild. Like, the amount of fan bases, the amount of franchises that can continue making money during that kind of situation is really, really short, right? So everybody's like laughing at the Predators or whoever, like teams that really need to watch it. Calgary, teams like that, they really need to watch it for rebuilds. Like, don't, like, be careful because your odds are your team's a little bit closer to trouble there than you realize.
And that's fair, but I do think there's another side to this coin, right? Which is in Toronto, let's say, or Montreal, or pick a big market like that. Yes, the building is still full and the money's still pouring in, but that building is full of fans who have paid a lot of money to come see the team, and they have opinions, and they boo when the team is losing, and then they call the radio station, and then they go post on social media, and they do all this stuff, and that can be an issue in especially Canadian markets and what we would consider traditional markets, where I think a lot of times it's harder to rebuild in those markets because, yeah, financially maybe you've still got the support, but you can sit down and say, we've got a plan, and we're going to feel some pain for 3 years, but we're going to come out on the other side. And then you get 2 months into it and the fans are freaking out. And suddenly the owner is getting cold feet and, all this stuff is happening. That was the start of the Brendan Shanahan era in Toronto, where he was able to come in and actually sell that and say, we are actually going to do this, and get the fans to buy along. And is it easier to do that in a place like Nashville, where you say, hey guys, we're going to take this step back, and maybe the local fan base is more willing to go, okay, you know what? We'll watch the Titans for a little while. Titans are doing a rebuild too. They got a number 1 overall, but we'll go watch them and give you a bit of space to do it. And I think the worst of both worlds is like a Calgary or maybe a Vancouver, where you're not quite a big enough market to weather it financially, but also you've got everyone screaming at you every time you lose. And that's why we haven't seen Calgary do it in who knows how long. But yeah, Nashville is a mess. And, to answer the question of Frankie, do you tear it down? You have to. I can understand maybe if you're an optimist and all of that stuff, you say maybe last year was just one of those weird years where everything went wrong. So we run it back, or we give it another shot. Okay, this team now is what they're telling you they are. They're not a good team. You look at their leading scorers. 4 of the top 6 are 30 years old or older. 5 of the top 8, I think, because Marchessault. And by the way, Steven Stamkos isn't on that list because he's not scoring at all. And I gotta say again, like we said with the Leafs, we were talking about Brad Treliving. A lot of this has to go on the front office, and I loved Barry Trotz coming in. Finally, a guy with fresh eyes. He hadn't been a GM. He hadn't been in front offices for 20 years, learning all the excuses and all the stuff about how your job is too hard. This guy was going to come in and take some big swings. But now you're looking at it going, A, the moves aren't working. B, the coach isn't working, but the coach who is the GM doesn't seem to want to make a change there either. I mean, at some point, this is a mess. And this is headed towards dead last overall. And maybe that's the plan
too.
But yeah, it's not a controlled demolition like we've seen in Chicago and San Jose and places like that. And that's okay, because a lot of times these rebuilds, that's how they start. The hockey gods give you a little boost, and then you've got to take the hint and follow along. But this isn't a hint anymore. This is a big, giant, flashing neon sign in Nashville saying, it's not working. It will not work. You have to fix it. And they're over in Europe. I don't know if there's any concerts in Europe that they can get tickets to and then cancel, but that's about the only thing that's going to save them at this point, because it is an absolute mess.
I was like, after last season, whenever that was, that 2 years. My God, that was when did U2 save their season?
The U2 was 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
and that was the thing that people forget. They were awful for most of that season,
and
then they had the whole U2 thing. They went on the hot streak, made the playoffs, and everybody was like, "Oh, this team's good. Let's go out and get Stamkos and Marchessault and all of that." I mean, they've been pretty bad for going on 2.5
seasons.
And not to do like revisionist history, but think about this at the time. They go on that hot streak, they make the playoffs, they lose to Vancouver, and like goals were hard to come by at the time. So what did they do? They went out and they got Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, and they essentially imported 82 goals. That's what they did. Like in theory, you were importing anywhere between, because they both had 40 the previous season. You were saying on a good year, I could get 80. On a so-so year out of both of these guys, I can get 60 more goals in my lineup. And it didn't work, and it's not going to work. And you were bringing in Brady Shea.
A crucial thing they forgot, by the way, was someone who could get the puck to Steven Stamkos, which is like why I was like last year I was willing to be like, maybe this is not true, ugly, full decline for him, just because he's so reliant on having someone set him up for those shots. Yeah, we saw the shot rate decline. It went from 11 to 7 per 60 at 5-on-5. That's not good. But now we've seen the finishing talent just crater as well. Like, so I'm concerned about Stamkos. Like, I feel like this is him rapidly progressing towards the end.
And by the way, $8 million a year for 2 more years.
Two more years.
This isn't. It's easy to look at this and go, maybe he just needs a fresh start. Maybe he needs this or that. How are you going to pull that off?
I think if you could get someone to eat that money and take him,
in a second.
You would do it in a second. Yep. And guess what would happen? He would go somewhere that's a good fit, and he would pop 30.
Because I love it. That's what I was going to ask. Like,
that's my view on Stamkos. I think if he goes to the right spot, and you get him on the power play, and even if you get him with the right player at 5-on-5, he doesn't need Kucherov, but he needs someone who can facilitate.
But there's not a team out there that's going to pay $8 million to find out. That's like, I don't think you would ever waive Steven Stamkos. I mean, just given the respect that they have around. But if they put him on waivers, he wouldn't get taken right now.
You know what? I'll throw a team out there. I'll throw a team out there that's like always kind of feels like they're, I'm not going to call them desperate, but urgent to try and make the playoffs, is Vancouver. I don't know. Maybe Vancouver's like, they're never going to do a rebuild there. No way. They're always going to throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. Like that would be something. But again, like Stamkos was so deeply entrenched in Tampa. And then this year they got the whole family settled into Nashville. Now you're going to go to Vancouver. I mean, it's a tough dynamic.
Can I throw something at you that is just,
Please.
I don't even know if I should put this evil into the world. let's assume Nashville's willing to eat half.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any teams out there that are pretty good but just lost a center for most of the season? Steven Stamkos to the Florida Panthers, where he slots in there. They resurrected Seth Jones. How much would you hate that if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning?
Well, I don't think he's a center on that team. That's because I don't think he's a center anymore. But if he went to a team like Florida and for some reason it all of a sudden just turned around and like that would be the greatest. Like
Brad Marchand was done.
It's not a heel turn. Because,
we all thought he was. Yeah,
it's just a really cool situation. Like down the road from Tampa, and all of a sudden this guy's popping water bottles again daily.
The Pittsburgh Penguins have $9 million in cap space. Dubas, pick up the phone, take the entirety of the contract, take on a draft pick as sweetener.
But if you
add another old guy to old guy Voltron, there's your trade deadline reinforcement.
That's what you have to do if you're Nashville is retain, and to get something as opposed to refuse to retain, and now you're probably giving up assets to get the guy out of there. You can't be giving up picks and all of this stuff.
They need those.
You need to do something, and now do you even have the right front office in place? And are you, like, would you fire Barry Trotz? You're not going to do that. In Nashville, the guy's a hero. The guy's the most important guy in the history of the organization.
He's second the firing line, that's for sure.
Is it? Do you bump him upstairs to president? I don't know, man.
Just give him the team. Just make him the owner. Just trade Stamkos to the Maple Leafs. I think that's clearly the solution here. Frankie, where are you this week, buddy?
We got, I'm in Montreal, and we have the Dallas Stars here tomorrow. So it'll be nice to get eyes on them. They had the comeback win last night against the Ottawa Senators. Actually going to go watch them practice today and get eyes on what's going on there. So looking forward to it, boys.
Let me know how that goes. I'm interested in the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, me too.
The Dallas Stars practice experience.
They're always like this analytical darling of a team, and they always lose in the Western Conference Final. A different coach this year, so interesting to see how that whole dynamic is with Glenn Gulutzan running the show.
Just congratulate Jim Nill on his fourth consecutive Gregory Award, and
soon to be named the Jim Nill.
Soon to be. Yep. See you later, buddy.
See you, boys.
All right, folks, we're back for our third segment today. We are joined by a man who covers a team that for the first time in the long-running history of the DGB weekend rankings, I think have climbed out of the bottom five. Is that true?
Yep.
Is that true?
Not the history, but in it was a streak of 3 years and 68 columns. This is the first time they're out of the bottom five. Scott, is the banner raising like the next home game, or did they just do it immediately when that?
It's the Athletic will be 10 years in January, and the Blackhawks haven't really been that relevant in the entire time I've covered the team for the Athletic. It was I covered 2 Cups for ESPN, and then came to the Athletic, and even the first year we weren't credentialed. They wouldn't credential the Athletic, so we didn't cover the team that closely the first year. And then the second year,
I didn't know that, by the way. That's very funny.
And then the second year was the last time they were in the playoffs. So it's been a minute since they were. And I don't know if this is exactly a playoff team, but they're playing better and they're interesting. And it's their best start since the 2016-17 season, so that's it's something. A little bit more relevant than we've had in Chicago for some time.
Did things feel different for you personally, waking up every morning and knowing that you're covering, according to Sean McIndoe, the 6th or 7th or 8th worst team in the league instead of the 2nd or 3rd?
Yeah, there's a little bit more interest in the stories, and you're not like having to write every story that's advancing the next 5-10 years, right? Like it's not always looking at. We're not talking about the 2027-28 draft already. So, that's a positive. It's a little bit easier when the day-to-day is relevant. So I think that's the upside, and certainly the Connor Bedard factor. I mean, I don't know if people are as crazy about as Connor Bedard, and the interest may have waned since that year one where everything you wrote about Connor Bedard was just killed and eaten up, and now it's there's maybe less intrigue, but he's I think he's proven some people wrong, and I think some people wrote him off strangely at 20. But he's performing at a high rate, so it's there's something there, and the fact that he's doing it with Andre Burakovsky, and he was with Ryan Green, who's a fine player, but like he's still doing it with players who you probably wouldn't think of typical first liners. Tyler Bertuzzi's on the top line now too, so I think there's a little bit more I don't know, stability there a little bit than he's had in the past, and guys who are at least pros, and guys who've played top line positions before, maybe a little bit on the wrong side of 30, and not long term line mates, but I think that's helped them too, just having guys who are predictable, and he's Bedard has more passes to the slot, and he's doing a lot of things that you see top players do, and Bertuzzi's finishing him, and Burakovsky's been pretty good in setting him up, so it's I think that comes into play. And then I think the larger thing too is that Connor Bedard's just faster and more mature, and there's some physical features that just as an 18, 19-year-old probably wasn't exactly ready for everything in the NHL, and I think he's understanding the league at this point, and it's things are evolving.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that I made a mistake with the Mount Rushmore of first overall busts in my backyard. That's I have Yakupov, Patrick Stefan, and Rick DiPietro, and I had already started carving Connor Bedard in, and I'm now starting to worry that may have been early.
You had to go back and get the Alexander Daig that you'd thrown away.
Power sanding off Alexander Daig in the nurse's uniform, replacing it was perhaps a little early. Maybe I should have let the guy get out of his teens before I cast judgment. I got to ask, as a Canadian, about the Team Canada factor. I was watching the on TSN last night. Mike Johnson and I want to say Craig Button had their Team Canada. They did not have Connor Bedard. They did have Macklin Celebrini. Is this something that matters? How much does this matter to Connor Bedard? And how much are we kind of trying to force maybe a little bit of a rivalry here between these two number one picks? Or is there a little bit of that in him of, what, I want to be in this conversation?
Yeah, I think that Team Canada is important to all these kids, right? Like they, I think it's on his radar. He yesterday he was asked about it and downplayed it, and he was asked about Celebrini and the points he's producing, and he said, they're good friends, and he's happy when he's putting up points, and I think Connor Bedard is so comfortable in who he is, and he's dealt with the spotlight so much early on in his career that, I think he looks at it differently. Where I think he's very competitive within himself, and he wants to produce, but also very supportive of those other young kids, because I think he understands what they go through in the spotlight, and all that goes with it, and him knowing Gavin McKenna, and he's talked about him before, and so I think for Celebrini, and I know they spend some time together in the off season, and they work out, so I guess some of the rivalry will be built up whether it happens on the ice or not. I think right now it's easy to create just based on their ages and all the hype that was built around them. But yeah, we'll see what the Sharks and Blackhawks become, and unfortunately the two teams don't even play until I think it's March or something like that. So
yeah, that's a bummer. I found myself looking that up recently too. Like when do we get Celebrini versus Bedard?
Yeah, so it's going to be a minute for that. So I think that'll be important. I think whether those teams are relevant and they take that next step, and it'll be interesting to see how much even they play each other against this sort of age, but how much on their ice at the same time. But yeah, I think it's important to him. I think he took some criticism for not playing in the Worlds for Team Canada, and whether that would have an effect, and Celebrini did. But part of it was, Connor Bedard understood that he wasn't the player he needed to be or wanted to be after 2 years in the league. And part of it was how, was the speed factor. And you looked at him, he was just playing even slower in year 2 than he was in year 1. So he attacked the offseason in a different way than previously. And the results have been out there. He's skating much faster. He's getting the pucks. He's, the pucks scoring on the rush and producing on the rush or at a higher speed and doing it more consistently. So it's hard to knock what he did in the offseason and saying no to Canada at the Worlds. Like if Connor Bedard's good enough, they're going to take him. It just whether it's this Olympics or the next one. But if he continues to build on this, and if he's at a point a game plus come a month or so from now, it's hard to ignore that Connor Bedard's going to only continue to get better, and the fact that he's playing with decent players, but he's obviously you'd think him around better elite superstars, that he can probably take this to another level too, and maybe not have as much on him where he's his ice time's crazy right now, and he's he's playing playing center, and whether that would happen in Canada, taking faceoffs, and there's so much on him too that you wonder on a Team Canada, and if he's just worried about if you're focusing on offense, maybe there's more there to give too. So yeah, if I'm Canada, it'd be weird not to take Celebrity and Bedard, right? Like you know the potential there, and the fact that they're only going to get better. I mean, it's a really talented team, but if both these guys are in the top 10 scoring and they're doing this in with so teams, what's it going to look like when they're playing with other elite players?
Is the skating the primary difference, and is that the thing that's changed the most when you watch him year over year? Has that been where he's made that leap? Is like we're looking for some reason to explain, I think, and this might be wrong, why he, why the production's amped up. It is, and I know it doesn't need to be one thing, but as someone who's watched, every professional game that this kid has played, like, is that the secret sauce for the time being?
Yeah, and I wrote about this on The Athletic on Monday, and we kind of dove into all the reasons. And one of them is the skating. He looked faster coming into camp, and then the NHL's edge data, it shows that he's faster, and he's he's not a burner, but he's fast enough now. And the line mates are important. Him and Burakovsky are having the most success. He's having the most success with Burakovsky than any line mate he's had in his career. I think it was minimum 100 minutes of 5-on-5, so the sample size is growing. Some of this maturity, like you see him being stronger, him being, I think Blashill is really emphasized the defensive side, and just being 3 years in the league and a 20, like he's played enough NHL hockey now to kind of understand what he can get away with and what he needs to do. And you see some of that in just the strength wise too, and you see it in the faceoffs where he was at 37% I think last season. Now it's at 46. Like it's like there's some significant growth there. So I think it's a lot of different things, but I think the speed was part of it, where he just needs to be. He doesn't have to be Connor McDavid, but he has to be fast enough to to be able to get to get on the rush and create. And he's been really good this year with just being able to to finish off those 2-1s, or I think he's so that shot is so unique, and it seems like it's a little bit more precise this year too. His shooting percentage is a little bit higher, and you always tell the goalies are a little unsure anytime he lets it go, where they're just not sure if he's gonna where he's gonna put it, and there's a lot of rebounds created. So I think even that's benefited Bertuzzi and Burakovsky, and the primary assists are up. I think he's set up 9 of Burakovsky's and Bertuzzi's goals so far, so, and being the primary. So there's a lot of different factors, but I do think the speed was key to unlocking a lot of that too, just creating more in his game.
So let's in the newsletter this week, I pulled out the gimmick of let's plant some flags. Let's plant a flag on this Hawks team. I'm not going to ask you if they're going to make the playoffs. Is this Chicago Blackhawks team playing meaningful hockey in March? So they get to March. Are they playing games that we're all going, oh, this one's got real, they're in the mix, even if they don't make it? Meaningful, big-time hockey for the first time in Connor Bedard's NHL career in March, yes or no?
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think it's there yet. I think this team isn't deep enough, and there's a lot of signs pointing that Spencer Knight's really keeping this team up, and I still question if this team can score enough goals. Bedard's going to cover some of that, and he's taking that step, and certainly Frank Nazar, and you got some young players that weren't producing at such a level last year. I just question whether this team's can score enough goals, and right now they're playing 11 forwards and 7 defensemen every night to cover a little bit up of the defense, and some of the guys who strengths are in different areas, and Artem Levshunov, the third overall pick a couple of years ago, is playing better. But yeah, I think they're so young defensively too, just whether the consistency of that, and you have some older vets too, and see how they hold up. But even now, like, they're dealing with some injuries. Nazar's hurt, Dickinson's hurt, and there's a couple of guys in Rockford that get called up. Nick Larders, who scored 70 goals in the OHL last year, I think is really intriguing. But there's not a lot of depth to this team, and I think some players kind of are what they are. I'm not sure Nick Foligno's going to find the fountain of youth at this point, or there's some young guys who are still trying to figure out the NHL. So I think there's I think they're a really solid team, and they're interesting. Whether Spencer Knight can keep this up through an entire season, I mean, there's been a lot of nights where he's been the reason. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep it up. And Arvid Soderblom's been pretty good as the backup, but right now it feels a lot of ways that like they're the goalie's carrying this team in a lot of ways, and so it'll be interesting. But I don't think it's this year. I think a year from now it's probably a little bit more realistic, and even now they haven't played a lot of teams from the Central, so we'll see when they start playing Colorado and Dallas and all those teams what that looks like too.
The important thing, Scotty, is that you have other stuff to write about. So congratulations there. You don't have to do the 15th or 20th assessment of Lucas Reichel or what have you.
Oh, yeah. Lucas Reichel's gone now. So
I know.
Laz and I have written about Lucas Reichel more than
I want to say congratulations.
More than any person should be allowed to. So,
Thanks for joining us, bud.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
And thank you, fine folks, for listening. I'm back tomorrow with Haley and a little fella by the name of Mike Russo. Join us for that. McIndoe, Frankie, and I are back. Of course, on Wednesday. We'll talk to you real soon. And again, thank you folks for listening. As always, have a good week.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.